Morning, everybody. How are y'all doing today? I'm doing great, but anybody who was excited for Borderlands 4, I'm not so sure. Because apparently the game itself actually isn't too bad. Really, the only complaint I've seen is about the performance. However, it's a pretty big issue. How big of an issue? Well, let me show you. Nick Tech tweeted out this. My goodness, the RTX 5090 can't even reach 60 FPS at 4K in Borderlands 4. A game looking like this has zero justification for this horrible frame rate, which completely agreed. And it really makes me wonder why they were even using Unreal Engine 5. I guess because it's easy to use, but like one of the biggest benefits of UE5 is how hyper realistic you can make your graphics look. And it's still the same cel-shaded cartoony art style it's always been. So like, why just use UE4? Now, you may be thinking, okay, well, they're trying to run a brand new game in 2025 at native 4K. Maybe that's the issue. No, dear viewer, that is not the issue, because take a look. Nick Tech then followed up that tweet with this. It gets double the FPS in 1080p. A 5090 at native 1080p is getting 84 FPS. This is absolutely pathetic. This unironically might be worse than how Jedi Survivor was performing at release, and that's saying something because that game was infamously one of the worst optimized games, like, of the generation. Now, again, like I said before, I've heard that Borderlands 4, outside of the performance issues, is actually pretty good. If anybody watching this right now has played it, let me know what you think. But of course, calling out a company for not optimizing their game correctly is too controversial for Twitter, because I have gone around to multiple Twitter posts, not just the Nick Tech one, talking about how bad the optimization is. And in almost every single comment section, there are Borderlands fanboys who are upset that people would dare criticize a $70 game not running well. So today we're gonna take a look at those people and explain why defending a billion-dollar corporation who can't make a game run well is dumb and bad. But really quick, before we get into this, if you have been watching my videos a lot and you aren't subbed yet, what are you doing? Subscribe, we're on the road to 30K. And if you don't, I'll be very sad. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this. So the first two replies we look at are actually gonna come from this Pirate Nation post, where he says, Borderlands 4's launch is a massive disaster. Half the people can't get it to run properly. 50% of reviews are negative. When you hire incompetent devs, you get an incompetent, buggy, half-finished game that's barely up to the quality of the first two in the series. Alrighty, first response. Disaster? Yeah, had over 200k people playing concurrently on Steam. Sure, man. Yes, because as we all know, if a game has a lot of concurrent players, that means it is not a bad game. It's not a disaster. I mean, just look at Cyberpunk, for example. That game came out buggy, broken, unfinished, and just a complete mess. And it hit over 1 million concurrent players in December. That must mean that the launch wasn't a disaster. Look, sarcasm aside, a game can absolutely have a lot of hype behind it and have a lot of people playing on release and still be a bad release. If you want to look at just player count, then sure, the game is doing pretty well. But general discourse surrounding the game, not so much. And oh, by the way, guess what? If a game has an initial very high player count, that doesn't necessarily mean the game is good. That means it was marketed and hyped up well. Again, Cyberpunk is a great example of this. Is the game good now? Sure. But on launch, when the player count was at its peak? Hell no. Alright, and then we have this other guy. Yep, it's a true disaster. This account is a joke, Lamau. And then shows a Google screenshot saying, Borderlands 4 launches to 207k just under 24 hours of release, marking the series' biggest launch. The previous record was held by Borderlands 2 with a peak of 123k. Now look, this guy didn't say this directly, but by this logic, Borderlands 4 is better than 2 just because it had more players on launch. Do you see what the problem with the concurrent player count argument is? Like, yeah, it's a nice booster on top of other things. Like, if the game was getting positive reviews and people were complimenting it, saying how well it ran and stuff like that, and it also had that many players, then there you go. Yeah, that's great. But in a vacuum, just having a high concurrent player count count doesn't mean much when everything else is on fire around it. I won't deny that Borderlands 4 is doing well, at least in terms of it has a lot of players. I will deny that it should be doing that well, however. And I mean, again, let's go back to the Cyberpunk situation. Cyberpunk had a peak when it came out of 1 million players. By comparison, The Witcher 3 had about 100,000 or 90,000 players on launch, which means that Cyberpunk had about 10 times the players on launch that The Witcher 3 did. I guess that means that Cyberpunk's launch was 10 times better than The Witcher 3's, and it wasn't a disaster whatsoever. Do you see the point I'm making here? A high player count does not mean the launch of your game is going well. Alrighty, now we're gonna move back and take a look at some replies to the NickTech tweet. Having a hard time believing this since my 4080 does 120 FPS with DLSS and frame generation. On Ultra completely maxed out. It looks amazing. DLSS and frame generation is a tech that you should definitely take advantage of. It's there for a reason. What do you mean you're having a hard time believing that? He literally is showing a screenshot right there. And dude, there's no way you're unironically using DLSS and frame generation and then saying, oh, well, I'm having a hard time believing that the game can't run at 4K natively that well. Congratulations, dude. You're using frame generation and DLSS, so you're probably not even running the game at a native resolution. You're just upscaling it, and you're adding fake frames in on top of that. People should not have to use frame generation to get a game to run well. Frame generation is a crutch. It introduces a lot more input lag, and it is used as a scapegoat by lazy devs and publishers to get out of having to actually make the game run well by itself. This is like failing every assignment throughout the school year and then crutching off of extra credit to get a D- at the end. Now, DLSS and frame generation existing is fine, but you should not have to use them on the highest end hardware. The only time you should even need frame gen is like if you're using a 4060 or a 5060 or something like that. One of the lower end ones. A 5090 should not struggle at all, especially like NickTech said, on a game that is cell shaded and doesn't even look super realistic. How are you gonna have a cartoony art style and the game is still gonna run that bad? You know what? I have an idea. Let's create like a talent test that you have to pass in order to use Unreal Engine 5. I guarantee most AAA developers would fail. Alrighty, what do we have next? Graphics card won't matter if their CPU is crap. You're just putting more strain on the card if you don't have an even more optimized CPU. Brother, the guy in the video was using a 9800X 3D, which is like the second best CPU that money can buy. The CPU is not the issue. The game is optimized like garbage. Stop trying to defend this. If he was actually using a bad CPU that was bottlenecking the 5090, then sure. But this is, again, one of the best on the planet. Do you see the problem with your argument here? I wouldn't call a 9800X 3D crap, but whatever. Maybe there's some super secret Intel CPU out there that's just infinitely better that the guy should have been using instead. I don't know. Anyway, next one. Maybe don't try running Ultra at 4K. Brother, it's a 5090 and a 9800. The game should be hitting at least 60 FPS. And besides, did you not check the follow-up tweet where the game barely hits 90 FPS at 1080p? That is completely unacceptable. Native 4K? Maybe you have an argument. 1080p? I'm going to request that you, and I'm stealing this quote from a movie, I don't know which one it is, but I'm just gonna say it anyway, I'm sure the comments will tell me. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Alrighty, what do we have next? Alright, this one is quite the thread, so get ready. Absolute bullcrap since I was on max settings in over 140 FPS without a 5090. And then NickTech replies, show me the benchmark without frame gen. And then the guy replies and says, why? I'm not the one crying about performance issues while on outdated hardware. Save your picture wars for someone else. And then somebody else responds, so in other words, you were using 4 times frame gen and getting 35 to 40 FPS. And then the original dude replies again and says, whatever makes you feel better about your outdated hardware, right, little bro. And then somebody else responds, calling outdated hardware to people who have a 5090 must mean your life is sad AF, mate. And then the dude replies again and says, everyone has a 5090 on social media, lil bro. It just shows how gullible your restarted ass is. Oh. Okay, then. What probably happened here was the last few messages he sent were rage bait, but the initial stuff I think was genuine. Bro was calling a 5090 out-of-date hardware. Like, dude, if you use frame generation, that's fine, but let's not act like the most powerful GPU on the planet is outdated, and that the game doesn't have optimization issues. How much do you want to bet this was a Randy Pitchford alt account? Like, he acts all professional and cordial on his main account, but then he just hops on this alt account to just rage bait people. This is like the Todd Howard situation with Starfield where he said you need to upgrade your PC if it's running poorly all over again. How about instead you upgrade your talent so that you can actually make a game run well? No? You just want me to hand you $70 instead? Oh, okay, fair enough. Honestly, relying on DLSS and frame generation to make your game run well is like writing an essay, having the worst grammar possible, and then throwing it into ChatGPT and just making it fill in all the blanks and correct all your mistakes. And you just hope that it comes out okay. Spoiler alert, it probably won't. Also, nobody is gonna be impressed. But yeah, anyway, guys, with all that being said, that is all I've got for this video. If I find more of these, I'll definitely make another one. That is, assuming you guys want me to make another one of these videos, which I'm sure you do. But yeah, this whole Borderlands 4 situation is just, wow. The fact that they were probably gonna charge $80 for this originally as well is insane. Also, a little fun fact for you, the reason Digital Foundry hasn't put up a video yet is because they were not given review codes. It's almost like Gearbox and 2K knew this was gonna happen, and they were just shoving it out the door anyway. So yeah, I cannot wait to see what Digital Foundry has to say about this, and I especially can't wait to take a look at some Nintendo Switch 2 footage of this game, because dear God, I cannot even imagine how bad it is. But yeah, anyway guys, with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, subscribe if you want to see more. Join us every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the gaming channel for gaming streams, including tonight. You better be there. Also, consider becoming a member if you want Discord access and awesome emotes, and I will catch you all next time.